at ease, but fists still tight with the possibility of falling into the ice-green water. Behind her, the crew ran back and forth in obedience to orders Francis or his first mate called out, repeated by the men in a verse and response, like the litany in church. None of the shouts made sense to Kay. They were almost in a foreign language. Belay she knew. At dinner at Orchard House, Francis would say, "Belay that," if he had asked for salt but found the cellar near his elbow. An island slipped out of the clouded sky on the port side. The upper mine said left was port. Both were 4 letters. Right was starboard, for the stars must always be right. The lower layers of her mind were quiet, absorbed by the smooth grayness, greenness, the gyres and eddies of the never-static sea. At a gap in the busy stream of crewmen, Kay slipped across to the port railing, her new boots silent on the deck, to see the island more closely. One boot fitted sideways into the scupper, the narrow drain ditch along the deck, and again she stood braced to the rail, leaning into it as the ship rolled. Over the side, green water laced with white stretched doiling across to that small rocky shore. The island was uninhabited. Wait, there was a little house. Look, a scrap of sand between great gray rocks. A rowboat beached on the shale, a path through scrubby pines leading up to a gray cabin hidden in the trees. That would be a place to live. When she was a grown woman, she would live there, and be alone always. Perhaps a boy would come with victuals from the mainland once a week. A boy with fawn-colored skin and understanding eyes, but she would not speak to him. Already the island had slid past, receding into the old life. She had a sharp sensation that this was the beginning of her real life, this voyage, all round the earth to the South Seas and China. She could not live alone on an island for a great length of time still to come. The girl stood sure-footed upon the deck, leaning into the wind, her eyes shining with the light of distant horizons. As soon as you try to tell your life, it goes false. Her eyes had bleared with the wind. Down below, she heard Thea calling from the saloon for the stewardess, her voice thready and hoarse from losing her breakfast. It would smell of sick down there, but Thea ought to be in bed, and would need help. Up the length of the deck to the forecastle, Francis stood busy with Mr. Wright, his first mate. Kay looked back down astern, through the intervening copse of ropes and sail, readying her feet to match the swell and rise of the deck. As she made the companionway, a particularly good wave took the ship. She caught at the stair rail, and half tumbled down the steep stairwell to the door, standing open as she'd left it, leading into the bright, wood-paneled saloon. An acre of sun was streaming down through the great skylight Thea had hung with geraniums. Everything shone with polish and cleanliness. This long room, with cabins opening off it on both sides and down the little halls, was their quarters now. Kay's cabin was down the port corridor, on the same side as Thea's. Her face palest green, Thea said, "You must learn to close doors on a ship." Kay's pride rose again. She was having no difficulty. She went to Thea, shrunk in an armchair with an empty basin at her feet, and took her arm to help her to bed. Good that the basin was empty now, because the smell of sick always made Kay be a little sick herself. The stewardess came as they were shuffling across the long saloon, a lardy woman, thick-set and a little deaf. She took Thea's other arm, and Thea straightened to pretend all was well, so they made faster progress. When they had her settled into the beautiful carved bed Thea shared with Francis now, the stewardess went away. Between careful breaths, Thea said, "The motion is